Ladies and gentlemen, let me begin with a simple but powerful question. Do you really know who you are? Not what you do, not your job title, your Instagram bio, your GPA, your bank balance, or even what others think about you. When I ask you, do you really know who you are? I don't mean your name, your profession, your nationality, or even your personality traits. I mean something far deeper than all of that. Because it's remarkably easy in this modern age to adopt a series of superficial labels and mistake them. People will say, I'm a doctor, or I'm a creative, or I'm an entrepreneur, as though these roles capture the totality of their being. But that's not who you are. That's what you do. This is a subtle distinction, but it's a crucial one. If you tether your sense of self entirely to external structures, your job, your social media following, your achievements, you're building your identity on sand, because those things are fragile. They can be taken from you. When they are, if you've mistaken them for the foundation of who you are, you collapse with them. This is partly what makes life so deeply terrifying. We're thrown into a chaotic world that doesn't always make it easy to answer the question of who we are. And if we don't wrestle with that question ourselves, culture will answer it for us. It'll hand us pre-packaged identities, trendy, marketable, attractive illusions, and we'll wear them like masks, hoping to be accepted, hoping to be safe, hoping to be valuable. But the problem is, when you wear a mask long enough, you forget that it's a mask. And then you no longer know the face underneath. And so we conform, we imitate, we chase validation. But underneath all of that, there's a quiet kind of existential anxiety gnawing at the edges of our soul, a voice whispering, there must be more to me than this. Let me tell you something you may not want to hear. You are not your job. You are not your talents. You are not your image. Those things are expressions of who you are, yes. They may reflect elements of your potential, your capacity for order, your impact on the world, but they are not the core. The core is something far more difficult to define. It's that place inside you that feels pain when you betray your own values. It's the part of you that responds to beauty, to tragedy, to truth. It's the part of you that knows when something is wrong, even when everyone else says it's right. It's the part that knows you were made for something more than scrolling, spending, consuming, and performing. And what makes this so complicated, so tragically complex, is that our culture is obsessed with image, with optics, with outward appearance. It teaches us to manufacture identities based on trends and algorithms. You're not encouraged to discover who you are anymore. You're encouraged to curate who you appear to be. That's a terrifying proposition, because when the image becomes more important than the inner reality, you begin to lose yourself. You feel like a hollow shell of a person, successful on paper, but internally fragmented. And that's when the cracks start to show through anxiety, depression, addiction, isolation. These things don't come from nowhere. They often emerge when the soul is screaming, this isn't who I really am. The problem is that real identity is hard. It's earned through suffering, through struggle, through deep reflection. It's formed when you sit in silence and confront what you feel. It's shaped when you tell the truth, even when it costs you something. It's born when you stop trying to be impressive and start trying to be real. That's a brutal process, but it's also profoundly meaningful, because you begin to realize, perhaps for the first time, that who you are isn't something you invent. It's something you uncover, and that requires courage. Most people don't want to do that work. They want the likes, the labels, the identity handed to them by institutions or ideologies. But here's the dangerous part. If someone else can give you your identity, they can also take it away. And then what are you left with? You're left with nothing. You're left standing in the ruins of your own borrowed persona, not knowing how to rebuild. That's why you see people fall apart when they lose a relationship or a platform or a career, because their entire sense of self was rooted in that one external thing. But if you've done the inner work, if you've grounded your identity in something eternal, something true, something earned through integrity and discipline and faith, then you can withstand those losses. They'll still hurt, but they won't destroy you. Let me give you a practical challenge. Take away everything you do, strip it all back, and ask yourself, what remains? If no one applauds you, if no one validates you, if no one notices you, who are you? Then, what values do you hold when no one is watching? What do you stand for when it costs you something? What are you willing to suffer for? That's the foundation of real identity. You are a being capable of consciousness, responsibility, creativity, morality. You are not here by accident. You are not random. There is something in you that longs for order, meaning, purpose. That is not a cultural artifact. That is something ancient and sacred. You're not a machine. You're not a product. You're not a brand. You're a soul. And souls can't be commodified. They can only be known, nurtured, and refined. So stop trying to be what everyone else tells you to be. Stop building your identity on applause. It will always leave you empty. The goal isn't to be seen, it's to be real. Because when you know who you are truly and deeply, no one can take that from you. You'll stop living for approval and start living with purpose. You'll stop performing and start becoming. Now, if identity isn't something that can be handed to you, if it's something that must be discovered, uncovered, earned through the fire of honest experience, then it follows that the only way to find it is to look inward. But that, let me tell you, is a terrifying task, because looking inward means confronting parts of yourself you'd rather avoid, and for most people that's simply too much. Self-awareness doesn't come naturally, it's not automatic. You don't just stumble into knowing yourself one afternoon while scrolling on your phone. It demands attention, it demands silence, and it demands something far more rare in today's world: brutal honesty. We live in a time where distraction is more accessible than truth. Everything around you is designed to keep you from yourself. There's always another video, another message, another noise, and you might think that's harmless, even convenient, but it's not. It's dangerous. Because if you're constantly occupied with something external, you never have to face what's internal. You never have to ask the hard questions. Why do I do what I do? What am I afraid of? What patterns keep repeating in my life? Why do I sabotage things that are good? Most people don't want the answers to those questions. Not really. Because those answers expose your weaknesses. They expose the parts of you that are lazy or resentful or bitter or afraid. But here's the paradox: unless you confront those parts, they'll control your life. They'll control your decisions. They'll keep you small, and worse, they'll lie to you. You'll believe you're making your own choices, but you're really just reacting from wounds you've never healed and fears you've never faced. So if you want to become someone of substance, someone who actually knows who they are, you have to develop the discipline of self-examination. And that's not some fluffy, feel-good idea. That's hard. Because when you look in the mirror and tell yourself the truth, you'll discover that a lot of what you think you are is built on illusion. Take, for example, the stories you tell yourself. We all have them. We narrate our lives in a certain way. I'm not good with people. I always mess things up. I'm not smart enough. I have to be perfect to be loved. And over time, those stories become scripts, and you start living them out over and over again, unconsciously, predictably. But here's the thing: most of those stories are lies. You picked them up when you were vulnerable, maybe from a parent who didn't see you, maybe from a friend who betrayed you, maybe from a culture that measured you with a ruler you never agreed to, and now they live inside you like uninvited guests, quietly shaping your identity from the shadow. You can't change what you're not willing to face. You can't fix what you're not willing to admit. And if you go through life blind to your own patterns, you'll end up blaming everyone else for your suffering. You'll say life isn't fair or people don't understand me, but the truth is you don't understand you, and that's the problem. Now you might ask, where do I start? And that's a fair question. You start by watching yourself, not judging. Pay attention to how you react when you're criticized. Pay attention to how you behave when you're tired, or when you're jealous, or when no one is watching. That's when your real self shows up, not the one you post online, not the one you carefully manage in public, but the unfiltered, unguarded version of you. And that version, that's where the gold is buried. That's where the work begins. You have to treat yourself like someone worth understanding. You have to sit with your pain instead of running from it. You have to journal your thoughts, reflect on your motives, ask yourself why over and over again until the truth gets uncomfortable. That's how you start peeling back the layers. That's how you begin to see. But be warned, self-awareness is not about self-condemnation. It's not about beating yourself up. It's about clarity, because once you see the truth, you can do something with it. You can start changing. You can stop pretending. You can apologize. You can make better choices. You can become someone stronger, more integrated, more free. But you can't do any of that if you're lying to yourself. And the tragedy is, many people lie to themselves for decades until life finally breaks them open. This is why I say you must voluntarily confront the darkness within you before the world forces you to. Because if you don't, it will. Life has a way of exposing every lie we try to live under. The truth has a gravity to it. It always pulls us back. The question is, will you go willingly, or will you go when everything falls apart? Let me say this as clearly as I can. The path to knowing who you are goes through discomfort. There is no shortcut. If you want to be whole, you have to be willing to be broken. If you want to be strong, you have to face where you're weak. If you want to be free, you have to face what's enslaving you. And all of that starts with looking in the mirror, not just once but every day, with courage, with compassion, and with the determination to become someone better. So take a moment, breathe, and ask yourself, not flippantly, not casually, but deeply, do I really know myself?
There's another force, one that's often subtle but incredibly destructive, that prevents people from ever truly discovering who they are. And that's comparison. It's one of the most socially accepted forms of self-betrayal, so normal that most people don't even recognize it when it's happening. But I'll tell you this, if you constantly compare yourself to others, you will never become yourself. That's a psychological and moral truth. Because the second you begin to measure your worth based on someone else's performance, you've already given up on becoming who you were meant to be. This is the trap of modern existence. Never in human history have we had more access to the lives of other people. You open your phone, and you're immediately bombarded with images of success, beauty, wealth, achievement. You see someone younger than you with more money, someone less experienced with more recognition, someone more attractive with more influence. And slowly, quietly, something in you begins to tighten. You feel smaller, slower, like you're falling behind in a race you didn't even know you were running. And that comparison, it doesn't inspire you, it paralyzes you. It convinces you that you're inadequate. And worse, it disconnects you from your own path. Now don't misunderstand me. There's a kind of comparison that's healthy, aspirational, you could call it. You look at someone who's achieved something remarkable and think, that's possible for me too. That's different. That's admiration. That's hope. But envy is not the same thing. Envy poisons the soul. It twists other people's success into a mirror of your failure. And when you envy someone, you don't want what they have. You want them to lose it so you don't have to feel the discomfort of your own lack. That's a brutal truth, but it's one worth confronting. Because if you don't deal with that part of yourself, if you don't understand your capacity for bitterness, then it will grow. And when bitterness grows, it clouds your vision. You start making decisions not based on what's true or right, but based on resentment. You become reactive. You betray your values. You abandon your own development, all because someone else's progress makes you feel inadequate. But the real tragedy is this: when you're obsessed with what everyone else is doing, you lose sight of what you were supposed to do. You dilute your own potential trying to mimic someone else's highlight reel, and that's a catastrophic mistake. Because no matter how hard you try, you will never be a better version of someone else than they are. But you could be a remarkably powerful, transformative, honest version of yourself. If you stop trying to live someone else's life, there's an ancient concept buried in many traditions, the idea that each person has a unique responsibility, a task that only they can fulfill, not in some grand, ego-driven sense, but in a quiet, deeply moral sense. There are people only you can reach. There are words only you can say. There are gifts buried in your being that will never surface if you spend your life imitating someone else. And the world will be worse for it because it will have missed you. So how do you fight this comparison trap? You narrow your focus. You take your eyes off the crowd and place them back on your own lane. You ask yourself, what am I called to do today? What truth do I need to live by now? What discipline, what decision, what uncomfortable step will move me toward who I'm trying to become? You measure yourself not against others, but against who you were yesterday. And if you can do that, if you can see incremental, honest growth, then you're winning. Even if it's not flashy, even if it's not Instagrammable, even if no one else notices. Because self-respect doesn't come from applause, it comes from alignment. When your actions reflect your values, when your words match your beliefs, when your daily choices are slowly sculpting a person you're not ashamed to live with. There's a kind of freedom that comes when you stop comparing, a weight lift. You realize that your journey doesn't need to look like anyone else's. It doesn't need to move at their pace, follow their milestones, or end in the same place. You don't need to chase what they're chasing. In fact, you shouldn't, because their calling isn't your calling. Their mountain isn't your mountain. And this is where courage enters the picture. Because to break free from comparison is to risk rejection. It's to walk a path others may not understand. It's to stop performing and start becoming. And that's hard. That's lonely at times. But it's also the only path to authenticity. And authenticity in the end is what gives life its weight, its beauty, its integrity. When you compare yourself to others, you're outsourcing your sense of identity. You're letting the world tell you how you should feel about yourself. And the world doesn't care about your soul. It cares about attention. It cares about image. It cares about performance. But if you want peace, real peace, you'll need to take that power back. You'll need to become the kind of person who wakes up each day not asking, am I better than them? But instead asking, am I better than I was? And if the answer is yes, even just a little, then you're on the right track. Because that's what growth looks like. Not perfection, not popularity, progress. Quiet, disciplined, honest progress. So stop looking sideways. Stop letting envy rob you of your energy. Stop measuring your worth by someone else's metrics. Turn inward. Do your work. Face your fears. Honor your calling. Because the world doesn't need 1,000 copies of someone else. It needs one honest, whole version of you. Now, after everything we've discussed about identity not being merely what you do, about the brutal necessity of honest self-examination, about the trap of comparison, there's one last truth that needs to be faced. And this one, I think, is the most difficult for people to accept. You are responsible for who you become. No one else is going to do it for you. It's a hard truth because it's tempting to believe the opposite. It's easier to say, well, I didn't choose my past. I didn't choose my trauma. I didn't choose the cards I was dealt. And sure, that's true. You didn't choose how your story began, but you do choose how it ends. You choose every single day whether you're going to become a victim of that past or whether you're going to use it as fuel for transformation. Responsibility is a terrifying concept because when you truly accept it, you can no longer blame your parents or your environment or society or fate. You can no longer shift the weight of your failures onto someone else. You have to look in the mirror and say, this is on me now. My thoughts, my choices, my habits, my discipline, my integrity, my future, it's mine. And if I ruin it, that's my fault. But if I build it, if I rise, it's because I took responsibility for myself. And that's the moment everything begins to change. You have to understand this. You are not powerless. You are not a puppet of circumstance. You are not merely the product of what happened to you. You are an agent, a moral agent. You have will and conscience and imagination. And those things, when ordered toward what is good and true, can change the entire trajectory of a life. That's a sacred thing. It means that regardless of how low you've gone, regardless of how confused or broken or ashamed you feel, you still have the capacity to choose differently, to act differently, to become something better than what you were. But it takes work, real work. It takes waking up each morning and making choices that are aligned, not with comfort but with character. Because becoming the kind of person you can respect requires sacrifice. It means saying no to immediate gratification. It means doing the hard thing when no one else is watching. It means forgiving when you'd rather resent. It means telling the truth when a lie would be easier. It means carrying burdens that aren't fair, because life is not fair, but you carry them anyway, because you've decided to be someone who doesn't run. Responsibility in that sense is what turns potential into reality. You could be many things. You have talents, aptitudes, inclinations, but potential doesn't matter if you don't discipline it. And discipline, real discipline, isn't about being forced by others. It's about voluntarily choosing what's hard, because you know it leads to what's right. It's about submitting to a higher order, not a rigid system of control, but a freely chosen alignment with something meaningful, something that makes the pain worthwhile. Because life is painful, it's full of suffering. But if you bear that suffering in the pursuit of something noble, it becomes purposeful, it becomes redemptive. This is why meaning matters more than happiness. Happiness is fleeting, it's dependent on mood, on circumstance. But meaning, it's deep, it's what sustains you when things fall apart, and responsibility is the doorway to that meaning. When you accept responsibility for your life, when you stop waiting for someone else to rescue you, when you say, if anything is going to change, I have to be the one to change, you begin to walk a path that, while difficult, is unspeakably rich and purposeful. And here's something else: the people around you are watching, especially if you're a parent, especially if you're a leader. You might think your decisions are private. They're every time you rise to the challenge, every time you face fear, or resist temptation, or speak the truth, you give others permission to do the same. You become a living example of what's possible, and that influence, that invisible ripple effect, it's incalculable. You don't just shape yourself through responsibility, you shape the world around you. But the opposite is also true. If you shrink from responsibility, if you give up and indulge in bitterness and blame, you poison not just your own life, but the lives of those closest to you. You normalize weakness, you embody defeat, and that may be the greatest tragedy of all. Not just that you refused to rise, but that you pulled others down with you. That's the moral weight of existence. That's why what you do matters. That's why who you are matters. Because your life is not isolated, it's woven into a larger story. You are connected to others in ways you cannot fully see, and every decision you make echoes outward. That should sober you, but it should also empower you, because it means that your courage counts, your growth counts, your refusal to quit, that counts, not just for you, but for every life your life touches. So the question becomes, what kind of person are you willing to become? Are you going to keep drifting, blaming, pretending, or are you going to pick up the weight that is yours and carry it like someone who understands what's at stake? Because here's the truth, no one is coming to save you, not in the way you might hope. People can support you, they can inspire you, they can walk with you for a while, but no one can live your life for you. No one can make your choices, no one else is responsible for your soul.